Hi everyone, this is Sky, and I'm here today to speak about the Pluto retrograde that we are going into, moving into May of 2020. More specifically, depending on your time zone, Pluto has shifted retrograde on April 24th, and it will stay retrograde until October 4th of 2020. So this is a good 5-month and some change transit that we'll be going through. And what does it mean for us? What does a Pluto retrograde mean? Well, it can mean a few different things for different people. This is going to transit everybody's chart to some degree, and depending on what house it falls in, and if you have any placements around the degrees of like 22 to 24 Capricorn, you will have this transit most strongly, but also having 22 to 24 of any cardinal sign like Cancer, Libra, Aries, or Capricorn, you will have some very interesting experiences come in over the next 5 months. Typically, Pluto retrograde is, it can be a bit of a forceful energy. It's like the changes that we've needed to make for so long kind of might get forced during a Pluto retrograde. Also, we can feel a bit inhibited or a bit stuck with things too. Like we might see that we have a big change in environment or a big change in our lives, but we're still with ourselves, so there's something that inherently stays the same. And Pluto retrograde always kind of spotlights the changes that we've wanted to make or the things that we've wanted to shift in our lives and what's beneath it, what's underneath that want for change. And if we do the change, does it really change that thing that's underneath it, In my opinion, from what I understand of Pluto retrograde, it's really important to understand the momentum that you were having before Pluto went retrograde, because I do often see that the Pluto retrograde, like during the Pluto retrograde itself, people can get like really impulsive. And impulsive isn't even the right word. It's like there can be catalysts, or there can be these like sudden stings or these sudden like awakenings that people have once Pluto's gone retrograde. Like, for example, maybe they've been in the bad marriage for years and years, but then when Pluto's retrograde, they're like, well, I'm in the bad marriage, now it's time for a divorce. But the timing becomes weird with it, because of the Pluto retrograde. Basically, and I mean, I know that this is hard for us to hear, especially with what we're going through right now, but Pluto retrograde in and of itself is never really the right time for a huge upending shift or transformation. Now, if you had already planned that before Pluto went retrograde, so before April 24th, that's a little bit different because you were sort of actualizing based on a different energy line at the time. But if everything was hunky-dory and wonderful before Pluto turned retrograde and you had like no plans for changes or anything, I can't really say that Pluto retrograde is a great time to make a huge change, but a lot of us do, It's either not the best time to make a change, or it's the time where things have been put off so long or change has been delayed so long that it just like you get pushed out of the nest, or you get pushed into that sudden change. And it's not always easy, but it can be rewarding. Pluto retrograde can be a very rewarding energy because it usually is like the result of a test as well. Now, we'll be having Saturn going retrograde on May 10th as well, and then Jupiter going retrograde, I believe, on the 14th of May, which I will make videos about those as well. So keep that subscribe button hit and checking back to the channel. So this next message might feel a little bit like, I don't know, it might feel different because we'll also have Jupiter and Saturn, but Pluto retrograde is like the results of a test. Like you've been tested and you're going to get like the really clear picture of how you did in that test. But then Saturn retrograde and Jupiter retrograde can both be like tests themselves. So we're going to be getting test results and undergoing new tests at the same time. And I mean, it is common to have these outer planets retrograde at the same time anyway. We usually do have them retrograde at the same time because they go retrograde once a year. So it's not too atypical, but it's always, and it's specifically over the last few years, it's been like very connected and very timely, like the outer planets have been retrograding almost in tandem. So we've been having to deal with so much tests, so much testing, so much understanding of who we are and what we want to do with our lives, and going back on that, and going forward, so on and so forth. So let's get more in depth with what this specific Pluto retrograde means. Okay. So what's happening is we have Pluto getting up into that third decant of Capricorn and going retrograde. So Pluto's really advanced into Capricorn. It's been there for well over a decade now, and it knows what it wants from the Capricorn energy. It's very clear. It's very mature within the Capricorn energy. Capricorn energy in and of itself is mature. So there's a lot of things dealing with maturity with this retrograde. I mean, with this transit in general over this last decade. There's a lot of things dealing with maturity, responsibility, structures, limitations, the building of wealth in our lives, not only as individuals, but as a collective, especially with Saturn having gone into Aquarius. So understanding of our own collective wealth, understanding of our own collective needs and maturity and, power too, understanding of where power is concentrated, how we're feeling about that in our very own individual lives, but also maybe in very status quo power systems too, like government and all of those, all of the different places where we see power, media, government, medical professions. It's everywhere, So we're all kind of understanding how we feel about that. And the Pluto retrograde is probably going to serve as a normalizing type of energy. So my prediction as an astrologer, and I've spoken to other astrologers too, and we've kind of come to the consensus that the Pluto retrograde is probably going to reintroduce some amount of normalcy. So I think that I can kind of predict that summer of 2020 is probably going to kind of go back to normal. I think quarantines will, if they don't completely end, they'll be very loose and flexible. And I think that things will kind of bounce back, honestly. That's what I think, okay? It doesn't mean that that's right. I can see a counter argument saying that the Pluto retrograde will be a sort of an admonishing or punishing energy for the misuse of resources or the misuse of money, wealth, power, all of those things. Pluto has rulership over monetary systems, over power derived from money. The plutocracy, basically. A plutocrat is somebody who derives power from wealth, okay? Just monetary wealth, nothing else, not like office, not position, not anything like that, just monetary wealth. That's a plutocrat, So when Pluto goes retrograde, you will see a challenging of the plutocracy or a new level reached there. So it's neither here nor there. I'm not even expressing an opinion about whether that's good or bad. But what I'm saying is that the Pluto retrograde happening over the next 5 months is going to really probably empower that type of person to some degree, and with that empowerment comes what we've seen over the last century, which is the status quo represented by that. So I think that it's really going to be over the next 5 months a reintroduction of what we've considered the status quo and normal for a while. But also with that reintroduction, as we've had this time in quarantines and social distancing, so on and so forth, as we've had that, we might feel differently about it, because I think Pluto's retrograde cycles, it's when it goes retrograde in Capricorn. This is specifically about Pluto in Capricorn. Every time Pluto has gone retrograde in Capricorn, I think it's reintroduced a kind of normal, or it's reinforced a status quo. And with each reinforcement, there's a realization that it's been reinforced, and that creates this kind of this a circulation, okay, this new intelligence or something. So there's maybe a new intelligence also that we'll kind of receive. And I feel this more so to be a psycho-spiritual intelligence, where we kind of get our energy a little bit more. We understand as humans maybe what our energy is meant to go for, how we can, be more energized, because maybe through the time of not having to work as much for some of us, we've kind of seen, wow, I was really drained, I needed to sleep so much. Pluto deals with the re-fleshing out of energy too. So the moment when you first wake up, say you've had a long and uninterrupted sleep, and you first wake up and you feel that feeling of supreme energy, that is a Plutonian principle. So essentially when we sleep, we die, okay? And if we're really tired, we have no more energy. The sleep is a miniature version of death. It's not death, but it's the death energy line as well. And then we wake up and we have new energy again. This is what Pluto does for us. So Neptune rules over sleep cycles too, but Pluto rules over the energetic thing that happens in our bodies when we sleep. And it's interesting also to think with rapid eye movement too. That's one of the things that replenishes our energy throughout our body, throughout the nervous system. So as you have that rapid fluttering movement, quick movement within a small part of the body, it generates energy, okay, in a way. And that's more so of like it's more of a moral to me than I can say like a physical scientific truth. I'm not an expert here, but it's interesting that it is that phase of sleep where we have that trimmering, I would call it, that we replenish energy because it like generates the energy. So what I think you can also see with the Pluto retrograde, especially with the movements of Neptune, which I will look into here in a moment, you might kind of see that this is like a REM, like REM stage of sleep, okay, for a lot of people. So that could perhaps reinforce that some of us are still kind of keeping back, keeping inside, as Pluto retrograde does tend to pull us in too. So despite maybe having normalcy and having more openness in society once more, I think that a lot of us will still kind of maybe feel asleep or feel like we are replenishing our energy. Okay, as I kind of think that that's what this Pluto retrograde crowns, okay? I think that it maybe is an end phase to the process of energy replenishment, all right? So maybe you could see that for the last few years even, you've been super drained. We had Jupiter in Scorpio in 2018, which made a sextile to Pluto, and Jupiter has moved up to Pluto, okay, and will eventually go retrograde, and they'll all kind of dance together in Capricorn, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. So I think that since the time of Jupiter in Scorpio, since 2018, you might be able to recognize that it's been very tired, or like you've not really had a lot of energy to go off of, or maybe you've even had like chronic illness or some kind of energy deprivation, or have been worked really hard, or had to like really push through to get through things. And what you'll see as Jupiter, for the rest of this year, and this is kind of long term throughout the next few months, as Jupiter moves up through the last parts of Capricorn and passes Pluto and then moves into Aquarius, I think it will kind of be like waking up after a long sleep. And I think that there will be a lot more energy to use, okay? So Jupiter and Pluto will kind of be working together to re-energize the collective energy lines. So I could definitely see that happening for sure. What I also feel to be the most forward message of this Pluto retrograde, it deals so specifically with that sense of maturity. It's gotten so advanced in Capricorn, and it's not going to have that much more retrogrades in Capricorn. Like, it's going to go into Aquarius, and I think it will have at least probably one or two more. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that. But this is what we're getting towards the end phase of Pluto retrogrades in Capricorn, and I think that it's so much asks us where our limits have been pushed, where things have not become acceptable, where we really want to focus our energy, and what the mature decision is within that. Like, okay, so you've seen over and over and over again that this environment that you're in, or this house that you're in, is not treating you well. Will you change it? You've seen over and over and over again that when you do this activity, you feel rejuvenated, replenished, and like you have a sense of focus and motivation. Will you continue it? It's like, it's almost like giving a thesis of like direct, clear reality, unarguable reality. And then it asks a question, will you do that? Will you keep up? And then that's where you as a person set the status quo of your life as the type of person who maybe stays in an environment that's really bad, okay? Or the type of person who does what they're motivated to do, or the type of person who, stays in a relationship much longer than they needed to, or the type of person who can't stay for 5 minutes. Basically, the Pluto retrogrades, and Pluto as a planet, it kind of types us through our lives. It typecasts us. It gives us our traits. It's a casting of traits. So when it goes retrograde, it's the thesis and then the question. And we get, I think, a big opportunity to make changes during Pluto retrograde. I mean, maybe look back to last year too. I made a video about last year's Pluto retrograde, which went pretty well and people seemed to really resonate with. And I remember last year, during the time that I was making it, I remember filming that video. And I can personally say that my life changed quite intensely during the Pluto retrograde. And it is what it is. And only with hindsight can I really see that. And maybe that's kind of how Pluto retrogrades in Capricorn work. Like, you might think that you're moving into something pretty usual or pretty status quo with the Capricorn energy, but it really does ask a question, and you make a certain action, and that certain action really does calibrate what's around you. Okay. And maybe this is maybe quite typical. I think in life that's kind of how things work. You see something and you exercise free will, and then that choice creates a reality. And I think that's always. But the Pluto retrograde specifically is those times, okay? It's those times where those choices are made that really calibrate our reality. And specifically Pluto in Capricorn, because Capricorn is so physical, it's so tangible, real space, real touchable things, that the Pluto energy cast over that is going to have really an impact on our surroundings and on our environment. So yeah, maybe it is a good time for some people to move, okay? Especially if they've been in an old place forever. Maybe it is a good time for certain people to have a change in relationship. And I think definitely it's a time where things that we've not been passionate about, or things that have not been sturdy, or things that have not been working, or not been like kind or supportive, those things will wash away like nothing else, okay? It's not a time, I think, where we can really hold on to the things that are betraying us or being very unkind. But at the same time, it's not really a time where we can distance ourselves from what we've been loyal to either. So there's a paradox within it, You might kind of think like, oh, this project that I've been working on forever, I feel like it's really betrayed me. You might kind of think with the mentality of this energy that it would just wash away because it's not really put you in the best situation. But if you've been really loyal to it and you've really worked hard on it, it probably won't go away. So there's a delicate middle ground with this energy where yeah, things that have been really mean or unkind to you, or just aren't, and that you really can't be that loyal to, those things are going to go really quick. But at the same time, if we've been loyal to things that aren't good to us either, those will probably stay, just to really show us clearly that we were loyal to something all along that was kind of not really right either. So it can go either way. And I think above all of this, and at really the end of this entire transit, what we will kind of see over these next 5 months is the truth about things, okay? So the truth revealed, seeing people for who they are. I think that a lot of people are going to be seen in their true colors with this transit, and I think that that's ultimately what this particular Pluto retrograde is about. Not really last year's Pluto retrograde, but this year's Pluto retrograde is very much about seeing people for who they are, seeing people for their true traits. Kind of, if you go through a breakup or something, seeing like, wow, that's what type of person that actually is. That person may have never actually been able to be direct, or you may have never actually known how they feel, and you might really see that. At the same time, you might see like, wow, my family's always had my best interests at heart, and they're really here to support me, and I'm going to support them, and we're really going to, restabilize our sense of family unit. You could see that, or vice versa, you could see the destruction of that. Like, that's how Pluto is. It's always extreme one way or another. And again, like, I don't want to get away from myself with this, but people are really going to cast their traits with this transit, okay? People are really going to cast their traits. You're going to see people's true traits. You're going to see people's true colors, and you're going to need to be able to understand what that entails. So it's not just about saying like, wow, that person was a very disloyal person. No, it's about saying like, okay, that person's disloyal. I can't be loyal to that anymore either, or I have to move on. It's not about just the realization or the recognition, okay, of certain facts. Like, we can realize that we're in a bad place all we want, all day, every day, but if we can't change that, or if we can't step into our own power and make our lives better based on that realization, it doesn't mean anything, okay? And that's what Pluto retrograde in Capricorn shows us. It means nothing if we can't have the appropriate shift in reality in reaction to the understanding of certain truths or certain facts. So there could be a delay. I'll warn you all right now, there could be a delay with, we've got social things going on. We've got maybe less money than we're accustomed to. All of these things can kind of delay us. And if all that you can have is the realization, write it down and understand what you want to do. Like even sometimes like, you know, we might realize, okay, this relationship isn't working or whatever it is not working, but I can't physically make that change right now. You need to understand what change you would make if you didn't have limitations, okay? And really think of that. You know, think if I had an infinite bank account, or if I had, you know, a house somewhere else or something like that, what would I be doing? And you need to really wrap your mind around that, okay? Because you might actually see that it wouldn't be that different. And that's kind of the other fault of this retrograde, or the other, superpower of this retrograde really is like, you might kind of see that if you made a huge change, that it would still be very similar. So yeah, actual transformations from within that maybe even defy our physical surroundings, but I doubt it. I doubt it defies the physical surroundings, because that's what Capricorn's all about. But for some people with certain configurations, it could. Anyway, everyone, I so hope that you've enjoyed this video. I can't believe I've been talking for 20 minutes. It feels like I've been talking for 5 minutes. That's another thing with Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter going retrograde in Capricorn, time. Okay, and I'll talk more about that in the Saturn retrograde video, but time is going to be something else, okay? Time is going to, like, I can't say what it's going to be, but it's going to be something else. So yeah, think about your time. Think about how it's passing and what you want it to pass for or like. And on that note, everyone, if you want to get more content like this, I have an entire T-chat. It was the 11th T-chat that I did over on Patreon. We did talk a little bit more about Pluto retrograde in that T-chat, as well as some other cool topics with viewer requests. I took questions, I took all kinds of things, and we talked and talked. So there's more content over there if you would like to support this channel, as well as get the May general readings, which are available now on Patreon, early and ad-free, along with their extended counterparts. Everyone should come over to Patreon. It's such a good value. I'm loving it. I really enjoy contributing to it. So you can click the center of your screen now if you'd like to jump over to Patreon. I also have a sign up below in the description box. And your likes, comments, and subscribes here on YouTube make my day. Good luck, everyone. Keep that subscribe button hit and those bell notifications on, because I have a lot of content going up. It's a crazy astrological month in May, so there's going to be a lot of videos. I'll talk to y'all later. Much love. Bye.